Hi, my name is Ingrid, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this crochet dress. So the good thing about this dress is it's one of those things that looks really complicated, but is actually really easy. So as you can see, there's tons and tons of squares on it, right? My dress exactly has 50 to be precise, 25 on each side. And that's what makes this so easy, that every single one of these squares is exactly the same, just slightly different colors, right? So if you're a beginner crocheter, or you're not very talented, it's really easy to learn how to make this dress because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. And then of course it has the edging, right? And the top area. But those are both really easy to do, and just follow what I'm doing. So sizing. This dress is really easy to alter to your own body size and shape. I'm going to be showing you sort of exactly how to make this dress, the 50 squares, and I'm going to show you like how to lay them out, like how many on each row and stuff. But if you're making a different size, obviously how many each row is completely different, but I'm going to show you how to sort of make a pattern for your own body and how to fill and count how many squares you need for your own body. And also, what's really handy is that you can see on the side here, there's the little stripes, right? So it's not just like the square ends here and then there's all these extra stripes. And that makes it perfect because you can make it exactly to your body size measurements, right? Like you don't need to worry, oh, well, my waist's 3.5 squares, that's fine. You just add more stripes, more or less stripes. Other than that, this is super easy. I'm gonna leave the description, the written description, in the description box. So it's basically gonna be like a written pattern except for without all the fancy abbreviations. So it'll be super easy to follow if you look at the written description and watch my videos at the same time. They're great together. Criticism is always welcome. And if you have any questions, please let me know, preferably within a month after I posted it. If it's a month after, you can obviously still comment. I probably won't respond. But, YouTube is a great place. I'm gonna leave some links for some videos that are helpful for this one, like for example how to make the magic circle, which is what you can do here. I'm going to show you how to do everything like this, but sometimes it helps to get another instructor, sort of. Maybe they tell you it in a way you understand. And also, if you comment a month later and I don't respond, read the comments. A lot of time people just comment the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, colors. So I'm gonna show you the yarn that I use, but most of it doesn't have labels or where I bought it from or anything because it's several years old, or I've used it in many other projects because I tend to recycle my yarn. So I would just recommend, if you're gonna do it with the same colors as I am, you can do whatever colors you want, right? I think these colors look really nice together. I would recommend just looking at the swatches that I'm gonna show you in the video and going to your Michaels or yarn store, wherever you buy yarn online, and just trying to find yarn that matches the swatches. So it doesn't need to be exact. I would recommend focusing more on the colors going together rather than do these colors match up as close as possible to the ones that I'm showing you, right? Because overall, like, people aren't going to be comparing the colors of your dress to the swatches I gave, they're going to be comparing them to each other. So yeah, this yarn, the total of it was like 16 bucks, which I know this doesn't really count because a lot of it I already used or already owned, and some of it got at like a thrift store. But the point is that it's not a lot of yarn, right? Like, I would recommend trying to find yarn that's one of those like small, like for example, I'm not using this color, but like yarn like this, right? Where it's like this small little ball, because you don't need that much per color. I'm going to tell you how much you need per color in the video. I kind of forgot it now. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend buying like a full huge ball of yarn unless you really like the color and you're gonna use it again. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching. Okay, so this is the dress that I'm copying. That picture's from a Zara website from Spain. I don't think you can buy it in America. And here I'm just color matching. So these are the colors that you should be using, or as close to possible. Now remember, like I said in the intro, the most important thing is that your colors go together, right? Now that they match perfectly to these ones. But if you can, try to match them to these. Okay, so this is the yarn that I'm using. You obviously won't need that much yarn for every color. You won't need more than around 150 yards per color, in my opinion. Or 100 grams. You definitely won't need more than 100 grams of anything. So just keep that in mind when you're buying yarn. And you can see I'm using some scrap yarn that I already used. And your hook, you're using a 5mm hook. You could use one a little bit smaller, but I wouldn't recommend any bigger. Okay, so we're going to start with the first square. All the squares are the same, they're just slightly different colors. So I'm going to start with making a magic circle. I'm wrapping the yarn in kind of an X on the top of my fingers. And I'm using a 4.5mm hook. And I'm wrapping around and pulling it through. Wrapping around and pulling it through the top. And once you get that through, done. Bam. Let me show you that again. So I'm wrapping around the first two fingers. I'm pulling it through, going under the first one, pulling the other one through, and same thing with the top. Done, like that. I'll leave a link to a video of explaining what a magic circle is and how to do it if you want more information. And you can see I have this nice little tail that if I pull, it tugs, right? So just one more time, wrap it around an X on the top of your fingers, go under the first thing, pull through the second, and then go under the second and pull through the little loop you have. Okay, now we're gonna start making the circle part. Okay, then you're gonna chain 1, and we're gonna do 12 double crochet stitches. So as you're wrapping around, you're gonna go underneath the yarn. It helps to pull it taut. And then pull through 2, wrap around, pull through 2. So exactly like I'm doing right there. And you're going to do 12 of these. Okay, so once you have 12, you're going to take that tail and you're going to pull it like that, and that's going to make it all scrunch up. And then it's going to be like this. Great. Now we're going to take our yarn and we're just going to do a slip knot into the first double crochet, like that. Not a slip knot, excuse me, a slip stitch. Okay, so now I'm done. I'm going to take my brown, this is the dark brown color, and I'm just going to hold it there and pull it through our slip stitch and pull the other one to make it tight, and then I'm going to chain 1. And I'm going to keep pulling stuff because it's not really attached to anything, so it gets kind of loose. Wrap it around, go under, and through. So we're just doing a half double crochet on 2 half double crochets. Pull through. Okay, so wrapped around, and now I'm going through, and instead I'm doing a double crochet. So wrap around, pull through 2, wrap around, pull to the next 2. And in the same hole, I'm going to do that 3 times. So 3 double crochets in the same hole, like that. Okay, so then I'm going to go back, and I'm going to do 2 half double crochets in different holes. And then I'm going to do 3 double crochets in the same hole. And so you're going to continue this all the way around. And you can see it kind of causes you to have this square shape.
We're chasing one another, getting lost in another summer. Never wanted it to end. Now I'm losing all my friends. I'm reminded of the pain when I'm on the interstate, me and the moon.
Okay, so once we've gotten to the last stitch, this is, you know, again where we do the 3 double crochets in the same hole. So I'm going to do those 3, as you can see. Okay, and then I'm going to skip, I'm going to pull it tight, right, and then I'm going to skip the first thing and put my crochet hook into the second hole pretty much. It looks like that, that's really the first hole. It gets a little confusing because of the chain 1 you did, but you want to make sure that all the sides are exactly even. So there you go. That's the first square layer. I personally think that's, after this it just repeats, but I'll show you. Okay, so I'm taking my lighter color and I'm doing pretty much the same thing with chain 1, tightening everything to make sure everything's good. And then I'm doing my half double crochets. And obviously every round it's going to be slightly different because it's going to be more stitches every round. But for this I have it only been 2, and now I'm going to do my double crochets. So keep in mind, this round only I'm going to do 4 of them. If you only do 3 every single round, it ends up being slightly folded at the edges. So just do 4 one of the rounds. I happen to do it on the second one. Then I'm going to go back and do my half double crochets, as you can see. And there again, I'm going to do my 4 double crochets. Since before you did 3 only, right? There's no way to make it exactly in the middle, so I tend to do my double crochet stitches in between the first and the second ones of last time. You can also do it between the second and the third stitches, right? But you have to be consistent. You can't switch around. Like, you can't do on one side, right, because then it doesn't create a circle, like a square shape. It creates this weird rectangle shape. So as you can see, there's 3 stitches there, and I'm going in between the first and the second to do my 4 double crochets. Okay, now that's very confusing, so I drew a little diagram. The red, it would be all on both sides, so this would be 4 of those red things. I just only drew 2. And the red represents the double crochets, right? And you can see they're coming out, and there's 3 of them. Now the next level is in between the first and the second double crochet, because it doesn't work to go down the center because there's no hole there, right? And then the blue is the circles or arrows, is where I'm going to put the next level, which is purple, which is also not dead in the center because that doesn't work. Okay, back to the light brown. I finished the last stitch, and I'm skipping that weird little one, right? I'm skipping that, you're not doing that, and you're not doing where you chained. You're going to the next thing, and you're just going to do a slip stitch. Done. All the sides should be exactly even, and it should look like this. Okay, so now we're going to do the purple. We're going to do exactly the same thing we did the last 2 turns. Chain 1, and you're going to do your half double crochets until you get to that spot I pointed out on the picture earlier. And then instead of doing your 4 double crochets, you're going to go back to doing 3 double crochets, and you're going to continue doing 3 double crochets for the rest of the square. You only do 4 double crochets once. That's it, just once. Okay, once you're done with the purple, you're going to do the pink. Once you're done with the pink, you're going to do the yellow, and the only difference with the yellow is instead of doing your double crochet in the between the first and the second double crochet of the previous row, you're going to go between the second and the third. You don't have to do this. I just think that for the last color, because this is the last color, it makes it look slightly better and more like a square, right? So you can see, well, you can see I did my 3 double crochets in between the second and the third double crochets of the previous row. And you're going to do that not just for the yellow, I mean for like all of the last row of every square. See, look how square like that looks. Okay, so once you're done, you're going to flip it around and you have all these loose ends. I'm just going to cut them now, and then later I'm going to tie them all. I'll show you how to tie them later. If you want, you can tie them now, you know, every time you finish a square, but I don't want to do that.
So, I have my measuring tape. I recommend using a measuring tape, not like a ruler, because your body's not a flat line. And we're going to start underneath here, and sorry, let me show the inches side. And when you're going to go until you want your dress to go. If you want it longer, shorter, that's your choice. There's not as much wiggle room for the length as there is for the width, so keep that in mind. I'm going to go like that, and voila. I'm going to stop right here, maybe around 22 inches, right? Okay, now I'm going to keep this here, and I'm going to use this as kind of a guide. This is important. You don't want to move this, right? And obviously, first inches, find at the very top. You're going to measure. It helps if you're wearing something with seams, because then you don't need to try to find the exact center. You can just find the seam. So that's around 16. If you're a little smaller, a little bigger, whatever it is, absolutely fine. If not, make it custom fit. Okay, and then, right, so 0 inches is about 16. I recommend writing this down. And then I'm going to keep this here. I'm going to do around 5 inches. Okay, and 5 inches is going to be around 17. Okay, so we're ready for 5 inches, which is around your waist exactly, right? And now we're going to do your hips. My hips are at 9 inches. Obviously this is going to be different in everyone's body, so the amount of inches, whatever. The point is that you need to make sure you know where everything is. So around 9 inches, so I'm going to do this, and 19 inches. Now obviously you have a butt back here, not in the front, so keep that in mind, but typically it's around the same. So just try it out on yourself. So 9 inches, for me it's about 19 to reach the widest part, which I did already, the 9 inches from my hips. And just test that out to make sure. And we're actually going to go a little bit lower. We're going to go to around 11 inches. 11 inches. Like 19 and a half, we'll give it 20. Okay? 11 inches. And because this dress isn't going to be like completely curved, form-fitting, it's going to kind of go out. So once you get to the widest part, that's it, done. The rest of it's going to kind of flow out, so you don't need to measure anything else. Keep in mind, I did about 22 inches. If you want slightly longer, you'll see what works based on how big your squares are, and I'll show you what that means in a second, right? So the length, a little bit less flexibility. This area we're going to do later. I'm going to show you how to do it according to pretty much every size.
Okay, so I'm going to take a piece of scrap fabric. You can also use paper, cardboard, whatever you have that's relatively big. If you have a dress that's not stretchy but form-fitting, that's perfectly fine. Use that. So I'm going to lay this down, and I'm going to make markers at all the spots that I talked about. So 22 is going to be the full length, and then I'm going to do it 5, right? And then the next one I did, I think, was at 9, maybe 11, and basically what I showed, all the markers that I said in the previous clip. And you're just going to mark that like that. and then you're going to turn your ruler, your measuring tape, excuse me, the other way and measure how many inches it was. So I turned it the other way. Sorry, it looks like it's the same position, but I did turn it the other way. It was very difficult to film. And I'm just marking. So that was 14 inches. The top of it was 14 inches. So I'm just marking it like that. And then the next one down, which was, I think, 5 inches down. I forget how many inches that was, but you get the idea. You're basically making a pattern or the shape of all your measurements.
And we think of you. Watch me as I fall into the sky. I'm feeling tears.
Once you've done, you're going to connect all the lines until you have something that's dress shaped, kind of like this, right? And this is one of the squares, and you're just going to kind of count how many squares you need to fill out each thing. So I ended up using 25 squares on each side, and don't worry if it's not exact, right? Because you have those stripes on the edges, which I'll show you in a second. So you really have a lot of wiggle room for the width, not so much for the length. So as you can see, here's the finished product, and you have all these stripes, and here's how it fits nicely on my dress pattern.
And we think of you. When you're not here, I disappear. And the sun is so deceiving, and I'm so used to you leaving in the night. But it'll be alright, it'll be alright.
Okay, so these are the 5 color combinations and the 5 squares that you're going to do. You don't have to do these colors. These are the colors in the order of the Zara dress, so that's why I picked them, but I think they look really good together. You're going to have to do 10 of these squares each, 5 on each side, if you're doing the same sizing as me, or you're doing at all similar sizing to me, right? Yeah, 2 of them look really similar. The only difference is that the pink and the brown are switched, but I think it looks really good like that. Okay, so we're going to start on the boob area now, and we're going to do our magic circle like we did before, chain 1, and then do 12 double crochet stitches. I like to do, what I did was I did 5 of each color of the squares, and then I did the boob area, and then I did the 5 of each color of the other squares, well, the same squares, sorry. So I ended up doing 5, and then this, and then 5 more, just because it gets really, really tedious and repetitive, so it's good to take a little break and to do something different. This, of course, is exactly the same. You're just doing the magic circle, chain 1, 12 double crochets. Okay, so once you're done, you're going to attach the white the same way you did before. Just slip it through and make sure everything's nice and tight. Okay, and then in the next hole, you're going to do your half double crochet, right? But you're going to do 2 of them in the same hole. So I messed that one up, but you're going to do 2 of them in the exact same hole. And then you're going to continue just the regular half double crochets, just like you did before, until you get to exactly the middle. Okay, now the next one is the middle. So it should be the 6th one. So you've done 5, including the 2. And now you're going to do a double crochet, and you're going to do 3 of them in the same hole at the very top of this. Okay, so once you're done the 3 double crochets, you're going to go back and you're going to do your regular half double crochets down the rest of it. You should, I believe, do 5. So you're going to keep going, half double crochet, la la la. When you get to the bottom one, you're going to do exactly the same as you did in the beginning. You're going to do 2 half double crochets in the same stitch. So there should be, I think, 4 stitches at the bottom that you're just not going to use. Okay, so now we're going to take the orange and we're going to do the chain 1, right? And then we're going to turn it around and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do 2 half double crochets in the first stitch. And then we're going to continue doing the half double crochets up all the way to the top until we reach the top of this little triangle. Okay, so once you get to the top, in between the 3 previous double crochets, you're going to do the same thing. Do 3 double crochets. And once you're done, you're just going to go to the next stitch and do your regular half double crochets all the way down to the last stitch. And there you can do the same thing, just do 2 half double crochets in the same hole. Make sure you don't confuse the stitch that was your chain and the first stitch. For example, that's my first stitch. Okay, so you can sort of see the sequence of colors that I use. You'll be able to see them better in a second. But once I'm on the dark brown, once I have 7 stitches left, I'm just going to do a slip stitch and then pull through, and that's it. So you're ending it there with 6 purple stitches left. And now we're going to do pretty much the same thing with the orange. So I'm going to take the orange. So taking the orange and like almost halfway up, I'm just gonna attach it like this, pull it through like that, turn the thing around, and continue with my normal half double crochets all the way to the top until we get to the top, right? And then you're doing your 3 double crochets, and then I'm gonna go about halfway down the bottom, the other side, I mean. Okay, so this is all the colors that I used, and you can see I did the orange and then a little tip of yellow at the top. This is just to make it more of a long shape. If you're doing a different size than me, like if your boobs are bigger than a C or a D, I would recommend just adding a few more rows of colors until it fits you better. Okay, so you obviously have to make 2 of those, but once you're done, then you're going to start sewing together the squares. So as you know, there should be 5 of each, 10 in total, 5 on each side. And I arranged them in a specific order because that's what the dress on the Zara website looked like, but you can really do any order. Okay, so to sew them together, I'm taking an embroidery needle. It doesn't matter what type of needle it is as long as you can get the yarn into it, right? And I'm gonna thread it. I'm gonna start by just pulling it through the corner, right? And I'm just gonna tie a knot. That's it. Once and twice so it really stays. Make sure to keep the yarn a little bit long. Like, don't cut it really, really short. You'll see in a little bit why that matters. But I'm gonna tie it really tight, and then I'm just gonna cut it. Remember, not too short. And then I'm gonna go on the other side. You can count all the stitches, to make sure they line up. But like, if they don't line up, it's fine. If you make a mistake, most of it won't be noticeable. Okay, then I'm gonna go in on the other corner. It's a little tricky here because it's right next to yarn that I tied. And here I'm gonna do the same thing, just tie a knot. But instead of cutting it, I'm just gonna leave it be. Okay, so once that's tied and I have not cut it, because you're not gonna cut it, I'm just gonna flip it back the right way around. And you can see how it lines up here. These little knots are just to kind of make sure you keep your place, and it just makes it a lot easier to sew this. So now I'm just gonna take the yarn that's still attached, pull it through and go up, and then go along to the next stitch. You want to make sure that when you travel from like one set of stitches to the other, you do it in the inside underneath, so therefore your stitches are not diagonal. See how I'm just going straight across on top, and then underneath I'm traveling to the next stitch. So on the back it's going to be slanted, but on the front it's going to be nice and straight. And I'm just going to do that the entire row. Okay, so once I'm on the last stitch, just pull through, and it should look like this, or somewhat like this. And then you can turn it around, and one of those little tail ends that we didn't cut, I'm just gonna tie this yarn to.
Stuck inside this hopeless mess, I'm manic, baby.
Okay, so now I'm going to take the other square and just attach it to the other side. They'll have little tails from the end, but you can just ignore that. Just tuck them behind, and it won't be a problem. Okay, so once they're all sewn together, I'm going to start going in the same place you would to tie them together, kind of in the center, and this, I'm using purple, and we're going to make the stripes. The stripes go on the side, and they're a great way to adjust the size, and also look really cool, and they're what they on the Zara dress. So for this, you're just going to do, go in chain one and then just do regular half double crochets the entire row. That's it. Okay, so you're gonna do your half double crochets to the end. And then, once you're at the end, you're just going to pull it through, or cut it first and then pull it through. Okay, after that, you can just flip it around or keep it the same size, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to take my brown. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, just in brown. Okay, so you can do that on the other side. And you can see the colors that I added. If you want to change the colors, it's fine. It's just hard to not repeat colors. So this is like a good combination. Okay, so obviously we have those three. And then, as you can see, I did both sides. It looks like this. And then we're going to take the next three, which are sewed together like this. You can probably pause it if you want to use the exact same way I do. I'm going to show all together at once in a second. And then this is 4. And you can see how the 4 kind of lines up. So the in between 2 is in the 3. And I did exactly the same thing you do with the bikini top. Section, you basically start halfway down. So the top connects and the bottom also connects with the next level, which is 5. And then the next 2 levels are also 5. And all of the 5s, there's no edging on them. Okay, and so to sew them together lengthwise, you flip them over, and I like to tie. You know those little ties that I told you not to clip too short? I like to tie them together. Now that's not necessary, right? You don't have to, obviously. But I think it's just a really easy and simple way of making sure that everything stays in place while you're sewing it, right? And the corners are especially hard to do, and this kind of makes them a lot easier. Okay, so once those are tied together, I'm just tying the ends. This is really not necessary, and I'm probably going to untie it by the time I'm done sewing it up. But I think the more stable it is, the easier it is. Okay, so we're going to take the same embroidery needle, sorry I didn't really focus, that we used before, and just a regular white yarn. Okay, so I'm going to start at the end. You can start wherever you want, it doesn't really matter. The end is a little bit trickier because they don't have those nice little holes that line up perfectly. But just try to make sure that the colors line up. So there's 4 colors, right? And try to just make sure that they line up. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just doing that. Now this doesn't have to be perfect because it's slightly harder to see, right? This is definitely going to look worse than when I do the rest of it, but just try to make the colors line up.
She said, meet me in the bathroom if you get the chance to. Modern day romance, and I still don't know how to dance, but you're the reason I still try. And you laugh at me in the meantime.
Okay, so once I'm done with that, we're going to start with the actual squares. And it's exactly the same as before. You just make sure everything's lined up nicely, and the squares, there should be the same amount on each side. So you just thread them through, making sure that you're crossing over on the underneath so that the top of it is nice, all the stitches are nice and straight, there's no diagonals. If for some reason you added a stitch, something was slightly wrong, you misaligned it, it's fine, right? Like if you happen to do one diagonal, you happen to do, 2 stitches in one thing, it's totally fine. I'm just going to show you how to do the corners because they can be a little worrying. So it's basically exactly like normal. I'm just going to go across and then go diagonal to the next stitch, which is the next square, the first stitch of the next square. And I like to pull it really tight because it just helps everything keep everything in place. Then you go across and diagonal to the next stitch, exactly like your other stitches. Okay, once that's all sewn up, you're just going to add the next one, which happens to be 4. So you're going to line it so that the middle of the 2 is in the middle of the third one, right? Just like this. Okay, once you've all sewn it up, it should look like this. Once it's all sewn together, you can do edging in pink. So you can do this on both sides. Just attach it like you normally do, and then you're just going to do a regular chain 1 and then the half double crochet that you've been doing nearly this entire time.
Friday nights I'm being the same in a while, and you're the one I blame. And it matter things have changed. And it matter things have changed.
Okay, so it should look like this. You can see the pink edging on both sides, and of course you have 2 of them, right, front and back. They're identical. Okay, so we're going to start with attaching the top part. If you are making the waist the same size as me, but the boobs bigger, I would recommend sewing together the front and the back. I'll show you how to do that in a second, but I would do that first and then attach it so that the boob part kind of wraps around, and that will make sure that you don't have any side boob. If you are C or D, this should be fine. It works for me. So I'm just going to make sure that exactly in the middle, right, that it lines up with the middle square, and I'm gonna, right, hold it there. Okay, so to help me find the middle, I'm folding it in half, and then I'm taking my needle with my yarn in it, and because I want the ending to be on the back, I'm putting it in through this way, and I am finding the edge of one of the cups, I guess you can call them, and just pulling it like this. Careful you don't pull too hard though, it's just going to go completely through both of them because it's not tied to anything yet. But then I'm just going to keep sewing this. So same as before, you don't have exact, like when you're doing the edge stripes, sewing to the edge stripes, you don't have like exact, lines that line up perfectly, right? Perfect holes. So you're gonna have to, there I'm tying it there, but you're gonna just have to try to make sure it stays in place. Like I'm gonna tie the other end, right? Just try to make sure it stays in the same place. It's okay if some of the stitches are diagonal. Don't worry about it. So up there I'm tying it, and that will help me make sure that, it kind of stays in the same place. I'm not like stretching it in one part. And then you're just going to sew the whole thing.
And the sun is so deceiving, and I'm so used to you leaving in the night. But it'll be alright, it'll be alright.
Okay, so the top of the top, I guess, is sewed together. So I'm just tying the brown just for stability. You don't have to do that, but I don't know, I feel like it makes it easier to line everything up. And then I'm taking the same yarn and embroidery needle that I just used and making sure that the tail's on the inside. I'm just going to stitch it up.
Stuck inside my room all day, I'm feeling hazy. Stuck inside my head all day, I'm going crazy. I need you how I need you, oh I need you, baby. I need you how I need you, oh I'm going crazy.
Okay, so once I'm done with that, I'm going to flip it over, or before you attach the cups, either is fine. I think I did this before I attached the cups. But you're just going to tie off all of these ends. It's quite a lot of them. I'm just like doing a double knot and then snipping it pretty close to the end. Make sure the knot is tight, right? If you want, you can weave these in with a needle, but there's so many of them that's going to take you hours. So if you want it to look really professional in the back, you can do that. Just Google how to weave in your ends on YouTube. Not Google. I guess just search how you can weave in your ends on YouTube and you'll get a bunch of videos for it. But because there's so many loose ends, it's really going to take you a really, really long time. So I would recommend just tying a really tight double knot and snipping them close to the end. Okay, so now you're going to sew the two sides together. You should do it with the backs facing each other, so the insides facing each other, just like how it would be normally, right? Not inside out or anything. And you're going to take your needle and embroidery, yarn, your white yarn, and just sew all along where the pink is. It should line up perfectly because the sides should be exactly the same. Okay, so once you have finished sewing together the dress, you're going to start on the edging, the scalloped edging. So I'm going to start by, adding the yarn like you normally do and then chaining one. And now we're going to do 2 slip stitches. We just go around and then you go through. Sorry, mess up the filming there. And then you go around and go through. So it's 2 of those. Like that. And now you're going to do 4 double crochet stitches in the same hole. So on the second one, 3 and 4. And then once you have that, you're just going to go to the next hole and do 2 you're going to do 2 slip stitches again. Just like that. And so you're going to do this for the entire bottom of the dress. So again, it's 2 slip stitches and then 4 double crochet stitches in the same hole and then 2 slip stitches and so on. For the top, for the scallops at the top, you're going to do the same thing. it might be harder for the stripes because there's not clear things. So just try to stick the hook wherever you can. It'll look good. It will end up looking nice and clean. So just, you know, try to make sure everything's evenly spaced. And when you go over the stripes, just try to find a place where you can fit them like that. And when you're doing the actual bikini top part, it's exactly the same thing. So two slip stitches, 4 double crochets in the same hole. Okay, so for the straps, you're just gonna find take your regular white yarn, and you're gonna find the top 2 holes. It's okay if they're not exactly in the center, but try to make them as close to the top as possible. We're gonna pull through and chain 2. You're gonna make sure everything's nice and tight. So chaining 2, and then you're gonna do a triple crochet. So you're gonna wrap the yarn around twice, and then go through that same hole, pull through. You should have 4 loops on your hook, wrap around, pull through the first 2, wrap around, pull through the second 2, and wrap around, pull through the third 2. And then you can do that same thing in the next hole, your triple crochet stitch. And then once you're done with that, you're gonna just chain 2 and flip it around and repeat this until you get the length that you want.
That it would end, and I'll go home all alone, but I'd be watched and I'd be warm. I couldn't go to bed 'cause you were in my head, and then there were 2, me and the moon.
Okay, so this is what the dress looks like so far. And obviously, to make it stay up, you're going to need straps. So I would recommend putting it on, making sure that everything fits. If you need to adjust it, this is the best time. Well, actually, you should put it on before you attach the cups to make sure this part fits. And then when you attach the cups, you should put it on to make sure everything fits. Now for the straps, you're going to take your measuring tape. If you don't have a measuring tape, I would recommend using string. And using it like a measuring tape, and then cutting it and putting it along a ruler so you know how much you need to make, how long you need to make the straps. So just gonna hold it up like this. Then you're gonna put it at the top where you want the straps to be, and you're gonna go all the way to the back, and where the marking is right here. You can make the straps more like this, however long you want. Just put where you want, and then keep track of that measurement. So for me, that's around 22 inches. And obviously both sides should be the same.
I'm so used to you.
Okay, so once you have crocheted a decent amount of the straps, you should measure it using your measuring tape from before and whatever measurement you got. Again, I got 22 inches, so I'm gonna keep doing my triple crochets until I get 22 inches, like that. And then once you're done with that, you're gonna attach it to the back. And from measuring the straps on yourself, you should know around where you want the straps to connect. It doesn't really matter, it just depends how far wide you want them or closer together. I'm taking my embroidery needle and my yarn, and I'm just placing the straps where I want them to be. And you can purposely leave, like not cut the yarn too short once you finish the straps, and that'll give you yarn to use, or you could just attach a piece of yarn, doesn't really matter. And then just finding 2 holes and just gonna attach the straps. There's no like real professional, well, I'm sure there's a professional way to do it, I don't know. Just make sure it's sturdy. You don't want this to break, right? That would be terrible if your strap's just broke in public. So just make sure everything's nice and sturdy. I just kind of go over and over. And you want to make sure that the straps are straight. Like, you don't want them to be twisted around. You want to make sure they lie flat. Otherwise they're going to be sewn to the dress twisted.